What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 5 of What? The RizPod. It's your boy, the man, the myth, the legend himself, RizGod, bringing you guys a RizPod. Today, we're bringing in the 5th episode. I'm really excited for this one because we're kind of going to go back and talk about how right and wrong we were for the NFL playoffs as a whole, as well as talk about Super Bowl 57. Joining me today is two familiar faces to the podcast. We're going to start with two legends, starting off with one legend himself, Mr. Michael. Michael, how's it going?
What's going on? Ready to be back, ready to talk about how good the Seahawks did. Yeah, we're happy to be here.
Yeah,
wearing the Brady jersey in honor of the GOAT retiring. So
not only did Brady retire, but I think the Seattle Seahawks fandom might have too with how they performed in week 1 of the playoffs. But joining Michael and myself is Spencer. What's going on, Spence?
What's up? Happy to be back and talk about, the good and the bad of my predictions from last time.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited. Obviously, we're here to talk about the Super Bowl, with it being the Chiefs versus the Eagles. Oddly enough, none of us were right in terms of this prediction. Half some of them were half right. Me, I didn't have either of these teams making it. But we'll get into the Super Bowl. And before we really talk about who our picks to obviously win Super Bowl 57 is, I want to talk about what we said to kind of get to this point, where our picks went right, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So I kind of want to start off with where it all started, the first round of the playoffs. Just kind of going up like matchup by matchup. So I think the first big game that I really want to talk about, kind of where we all differed, is the Chargers and the Jags, obviously, with us differing between the Jaguars winning and the Chargers winning. I had the Jaguars and you guys had the Chargers. Obviously, the Jaguars came back down 27-0, or sorry, the Jags came back down 27-0 against the Chargers. Any thoughts on that? How did you think about the game? Just the Chargers as a whole. Obviously, you guys had the Chargers.
Yeah, it was pretty ridiculous because I think for some reason, I think I said this the last time, I've always kind of had like a little bit of an affinity to the Chargers. I don't really know why, but anyone who pays attention to the Chargers for recent history, even back before they had Brandon Staley, they blow games. They just do. They're kind of like the Falcons of the AFC. And I didn't expect them to get out to the start that they did. I thought it was going to be like, and at that point, I'm like, wow, I really thought this was going to be like a battle. I was excited for this. And Trevor Lawrence looked terrible. But at halftime, I was sitting there watching it with my dad, and I'm like, I should probably sprinkle some money on the Jags right now, or just because it would be the most Chargers thing ever. And once the Jags started picking up steam, to me, it almost felt like inevitable. It was really weird. I've never felt that way about a team that had that big of a lead, where I was like, it's the Chargers. They're gonna blow it. And they did. And you feel for Justin Herbert and really the whole team. The fact that Brandon Staley still has his job after that is mind-boggling to me. I was talking about he should get fired if they lose, just in a regular fashion, in a shootout, whatever. To get out-coached that severely in the second half, where you have a quarterback against you who threw 4 picks in the first half and you lose a game, it's ridiculous. If I was a Chargers fan, I don't know how I would have been able to even sleep at night after that game, but you have to give credit to Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence because they found the weak spot and they rebounded.
Yeah, Michael, your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with pretty much everything Spencer just said. I think the fact that Brandon Staley still has a job is kind of crazy. I feel like it was all coaching. Like, they got very conservative, I feel like, once they had the big lead, just run. Didn't work. Their defense completely fell apart. Doug Peterson's a fantastic coach. I feel like that was just something kind of overlooked because you looked at the talent disparity between the two teams, and the Chargers are much more talented, but coaching matters a ton. And I think the home field mattered there as well. And just in general, I feel like Trevor Lawrence really showed up in a game where he started off so terribly. I mean, second half, like, even after throwing 4 picks in the first, I mean, second half, he was literally just like red hot on fire, looked better than Justin Herbert, just played a great game. And I remember in the offseason when the Jags signed all these receivers, like, I was like, why are they giving out so much money to like mid receivers? Like, these guys aren't anything special. I mean, Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, I mean, Evan Ingram, like, they're fine players, but I mean, it worked. Like, it worked to everybody's surprise, and I think they have a really bright future moving forward too, because I think Lawrence is the real deal here. So definitely was a good game to watch. The announcing was awful. I don't know if anyone had the I think that was the Tony Dungy game, right? That was Dungy and I think it was Al Michaels just putting everybody to sleep, because that should have been like the most exciting game of the playoffs so far. But honestly, when I remember just watching that, I was like, this is awful. Like they're showing literally no excitement whatsoever. So I'm like, that kind of ruined it a little bit, but it was still really, really fun end.
Yeah, watching the game, Trevor Lawrence said it best. I don't think you could write a better script. Throwing four interceptions in the first half and then coming back to beat the Chargers. We mentioned, and this was the reason why I had the Jags beating the Chargers. We mentioned when we did the predictions that, like, if they lose, they're going to lose because of Brandon Staley, and that's exactly why they lost. And just like you guys said, I was texting all my group chats, everything, like, this dude is literally going to get fired at the press conference. Like, it's going to be so hilarious. And it was midnight. He didn't get fired. We're like, all right, whatever. They want to spare this guy some time. The next day, he didn't get fired. And then you realize that they're still keeping him. And I'm just like, dude, what the fuck's going on? I think the Jags, and we'll talk about it in the next matchup, just briefly going over everything. I think they did what they had to do. They were well coached. They played when it mattered. If you told me Trevor Lawrence threw 4 picks and somehow still won the game, I would have been like, absolutely no way. But given Spence, like you said, the Chargers are known for blowing games, and they honestly, like, that might have been worse than the 28-3 Falcons loss, just in hindsight. Obviously, it's the Super Bowl, but it's like, dude, you're up 27-0 at halftime. Like, I don't know. It's so hard. Like, I hate being an armchair quarterback, but, like, dude, just fucking run the ball. Like, I don't know. I just don't get it.
For me, it was like mixing the play action a little bit, because I felt they were so conservative, and then, like, I could be wrong on this, but I don't think they turned the ball over in the second half. Normally, if you have a huge collapse like that, it's because of turnovers. They just three and out punt, couldn't get a stop on defense. It was like a complete systematic failure. The fact that Sean Payton isn't a Charger and is instead the Broncos head coach is a travesty for that entire organization.
No, I agree. And with that, obviously the Chargers advanced to the next round. I ended up being 1-0 for my ranking so far, while you guys took the
Jaguars.
first loss. Jaguars. Did I say Chargers?
You did.
It's whatever. They suck anyways.
Yeah.
Going on to the next one, I think we'll just briefly go over this too. Obviously, the Bengals versus the Ravens. We all had the Bengals going, advancing over the Ravens. Pretty simple. Obviously, we kind of talked about how Huntley isn't the real deal. Lamar Jackson didn't really want to play. I'll give credit to where credit's due for the Ravens. They stuck in it. Their defense really played well. And there was points in the game where they really could have came back if it wasn't for Hubba Hubba Choo Choo taking it to the house for 99 yards. Like, the Ravens could have won that game. So, obviously, to me, it's pretty straightforward that we all had the Bengals winning. They ended up doing the job. But it was a lot closer than it should have been.
Yeah, it was really kind of like exactly how we said. Just like how we said with the Chargers, if they lost, it would come down to coaching. I think all of us were kind of on the thing of, like, the Bengals are the Ravens are well coached. They have a good defense. They could hang around, and they did everything they had to do to win. That touchdown for Sam Hubbard is like a complete backbreaker. And hey, for as much as we were ragging on Huntley, he's a Pro Bowler somehow. So
yeah, over Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
So, Michael?
Yeah, he really got chosen over Trevor Lawrence. That's like a real thing. That's crazy. That's who even makes that decision?
He has two regular season touchdowns on the season.
Yeah,
2.
Who decides this? Like, I just don't understand. But yeah, the Ravens will have it. I mean, listen, they put up a good fight. Like, I think I remember on the podcast I said I thought the Bengals would blow them out, but as the week went on, I was like, I feel like this is a division game. I feel like the Ravens are a really strong team outside of the quarterback position, and I guess the skill players like receivers and whatnot. Honestly, the game was kind of boring, but, like, in general, like, the Ravens did pretty well. I wasn't super impressed with the Bengals, but I did thought they protected the quarterback pretty well, which was big, and it gave me high hopes for how they would do against Buffalo. So overall, I think the Bengals they did enough. They had the big play, but wasn't like a convincing win. And the Ravens now, they're going into the offseason with 2 Pro Bowl quarterbacks. Like, they have to make a decision on which one's better. So we'll see what they decide. But yeah, this is probably my least. I won't lie. This is the game that, like, I think this is the Saturday night game, right? Or Sunday night? It's Saturday night, right?
Yeah,
it was Saturday night game. So by the time this game was on, I was just like, like, I don't know. It was kind of a stinker. But
I didn't even watch it. Full disclosure, I watched the highlights.
definitely was. I was half watching, half not. So just that game.
Yeah, it was like I said, we just kind of brush it over. It was pretty straightforward. Another game that should have been pretty straightforward. Your two Super Bowl contenders was the Bills versus the Dolphins. Skylar Thompson somehow almost managed for them to beat the Bills. I don't really want to touch too much on that game in general because I think it ultimately leads to the Bills' demise against the Bengals. But kind of just touching on that game, I think I don't know how to really describe it. I think the Bills got outcoached by McDaniels. I just think he had his guys just come in there to Buffalo wanting to win, and I felt like the Bills were just kind of lackadaisical.
Yeah, they were
And
flat.
yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, go ahead. I was pretty much done with that, to be honest.
Yeah, I felt like they were flat. I mean, they came in expecting, like we all did, for them to roll over the Dolphins. And the Dolphins hung in there. I mean, Skylar Thompson, you give him credit. He made some plays. He really was who we thought he was, though, in that game. I think if they had Tua or even Teddy Bridgewater, they really would have had a legitimate chance of winning that game just with how flat the Bills came out. So you got to give credit, like you said, to Mike McDaniel. And hopefully Tua is good. I mean, if he comes back next year and learns how to not fall head first backwards every time he gets sacked, they could be a real contender.
Yeah. Michael, final thoughts, I guess, on that game.
Yeah, on the game, I mean, I remember where I was watching that and I was just like, this is unbelievable. Like, I can't believe that Buffalo isn't just destroying this team right now. And that was the first sign of like, okay, well, I know my Super Bowl pick is not going to win the Super Bowl because like there was no excuse for that. They had absolutely no defense. Miami, like again, like you said, Mike McDaniel did a great job coaching that, scheming that. That's all on him there because there was no business for them even being close. They also did have some lucky plays as well in the game. So some things did go right for him, but I think they just got a new D coordinator, if I'm not wrong. That's really good. So hopefully they can fix this moving forward. Who was it?
Vic Fangio.
Vic Fangio, yeah. So they should be able to be a really good team next year. The one thing I'll say about Miami is they had an opportunity to sign Tom Brady, and it sounds like they turned him down, and that's what led to him retiring. So if that's the truth, that's a bad decision. They should have.
This offseason?
Yeah, I read that the teams that Brady wanted to play for were San Fran, Miami, and neither of them like had interest. So
wow, that's wild.
Yeah,
I think Brady got the script early for next season and realized that he wasn't going to win the Super Bowl. So he decided just to take it to the sunset. Yeah,
I'm trying to make this about Brady as much as possible. But yeah, overall, that game was really exciting. Actually, also very scary because I had a ton of money on Buffalo. Just throw them in every kind of parlay you have because it's automatic, right? And then they almost blew that, so that was sketchy. But yeah, bad signs from Buffalo there for the rest of the playoffs.
I'm actually like, now that you're bringing that up, I'm getting flashbacks because I had them to cover 6.5 when their spread was like 14.5 and they didn't cover that. So I was very anti-Buffalo for the rest of the postseason. Let's just kind of finish out the AFC. So we're gonna go over to the Chiefs versus the Jags. Obviously, at this point, I'm undefeated right now. I got the script in the bag right now. I was completely right through the first round of the AFC. I think we pretty much predicted the Chiefs kind of taking this game by storm, whether it was against the Jags or the Chargers. I will say I was very impressed with Trevor Lawrence once again holding it out there. I think the Jags, the score was a lot closer than how the game really ended up playing out, in my opinion. I think the Chiefs dominated the game throughout anyways, but I think it's something to note for when we talk about the Super Bowl that Patrick Mahomes has something about him, and we mentioned this in our first podcast together, that he really doesn't need much to be great. And I think that's exactly what he proved in that game. I felt like he just kind of just played with house money. Really, like I don't feel like there was a big play to give them that huge lead. I think they just stuck to their game plan and really just won with no like worries. And I think that's the reason why the Chiefs ended up making it to the Super Bowl, let alone just beating the Jags.
Yeah. I mean, for me, obviously Mahomes got hurt in that game. When I saw that injury happen, I was like, oh, like his season might be over. Like it looked bad. Yeah. And then he's coming out, he's limping. I think they could have won the game with Chad Henne because they didn't ask Mahomes to do a ton. The defense played well, and it's like you said, they came out, they executed a game plan. You don't have to win every game by 30, right? Like they knew what they had to do to win the game, and they did that. There were a couple, unlucky bounces for the Jags. I think Trevor Lawrence dropping one right in the breadbasket for Christian Kirk, and he just lets it go through his hands was pretty brutal.
Yep.
And Chris Collinsworth saying that he overthrew that ball while Mahomes gets all the credit for like throwing a ball out of bounds, kind of ridiculous. But I think Trevor Lawrence did everything he could. It's just when you're playing Mahomes, you're playing Andy Reid, it's just hard to win. I mean, it's hard to beat a great team that's well coached, that is just through and through. I mean, they're in the Super Bowl for a reason. So I can't really blame the Jaguars for their loss. I think they did everything they could have. Chiefs are just better than them, and they played better.
Yeah, and the Jags were coming off of essentially 2 playoff wins in a row because they beat the Titans to get into the playoffs, and they beat the Chargers. Like, that's a tough ass to go 3 for 3 in Arrowhead and try to beat Mahomes. Like, good luck. But I thought they did a pretty good job overall. I mean, they kept it close. I wasn't like, I mean, when Mahomes went down, like, I was like, okay, like, obviously like nervous for Mahomes, but also I was like, this game's like, I could see the Jags winning this because they were playing them pretty close in the first half, and then even towards the end they were getting some momentum back. But yeah, overall, I mean, the Chiefs end of this, like, they're just too good. Mahomes is too good. He's unreal. And yeah, just not too much to talk about here. But it was an above average game than what I was going into it expecting. So
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think flipping over to the other divisional game in the AFC, which is the big game that we all kind of differed on, was Josh Allen and the Bills versus Joe Burrow and the Bengals. And I will say I had complete faith in the Bengals. I knew they were going to come to Buffalo and kind of take control of the game. I didn't expect it to be as bad as it was. I really think Buffalo, and I don't know if it really had, and I mentioned this when we talked about it. This was a talking point that we all had, was I don't know if the Damar Hamlin situation gave them a little bit more pressure to play, and they felt like they had to be better than what they were. But I just felt like the Bills didn't show up in this playoffs at all. And Joe Burrow and the Bengals just came out and flat out destroyed them. Jamar Chase had a great game. Hayden Hurst had a great game. Like, I just think they came out there and just flat out dominated. I mean, like, people were making, the Joe Burrow memes in the snow and everything. Like, it felt like Buffalo just didn't have a chance. And obviously with the Bengals winning, your guys' Super Bowl picks ended up falling flat in the divisional. And the Bengals ended up winning. And so far, up until then, I'm 5-0. I might have had the script. I don't know. Spence, your thoughts?
Yeah, it was a shame because that was a game, obviously, I was extremely excited for. Obviously, like, the Damar Hamlin thing is a little bit overblown in terms of like how that would affect the players. But it's a great matchup, and I feel like it was kind of brewing into a rivalry in a sense, and the Bengals just beat the brakes off of them. I will say, when I picked the Bills to make the Super Bowl, to win the Super Bowl, actually, unfortunately, I kept saying over and over again, the NFL isn't scripted, but fuck it. And yeah, the NFL isn't scripted, right? So the Bengals were the better team through and through, and they just outplayed them. They outcoached them. I think Sean McDermott got exposed a little bit in this playoff run. I think there's a lot of coaches in the NFL, and I won't go on this huge tangent, but I think there's a lot of coaches in the NFL who are like really good leaders of men. I think Sean McDermott is that guy. Maybe not the best game planner, and I think that kind of was obvious. Zach Taylor really outcoached him in this game, and the Bengals just flat out dominated. It was actually like the most boring game of that weekend, which was unfortunate because I was so excited for it. I don't really know what to say. Just, you would think in the cold weather the Bills would be able to pull it out, and they just didn't. They were flat. Josh Allen didn't look great. Joe Burrow looked awesome, and it just kind of proved, I think it was a big slap in the face, at least for me, that, like, yeah, as much as we want to joke about Arian Foster, the NFL isn't scripted, we kind of knew the Bengals were the better team coming in, and they proved it, and they just played a great game.
Yeah, Michael, before you make your take, I actually definitely want to agree, and this is like for another time, but I think for the Bills going into this offseason, like, who's to say that Sean McDermott might have to take a step down? Like, I don't know if the Bills will fire him necessarily, but every year they have talented roster after talented roster, and they just don't go anywhere. I think he's a great mentor in a sense, like you said, like a great leader of men. They're going to get behind him, but he's been constantly exposed every playoff run to not just getting the job done. Obviously, what was it last year or 2 years ago when they lost in overtime or what it was? that's not much you can control there. But it's like you're going in as Super Bowl favorites every season by like a wide margin, and the fact that you just don't even make a championship game, is kind of like telling.
He won't get fired anytime soon, but I think it will be the start of the narrative if this keeps happening over and over again. Of like, okay, now this is a pattern. Now we have to really see if there's something. Unless they nosedive, like if they miss the playoffs next year, he'll probably get fired. But I think if they keep doing the same thing they're doing, then people will start talking about it and be like, all right, what is the weak link here? Because on paper, the roster looks amazing.
I agree, Michael.
Yeah, I have several thoughts about this. I think the first is I feel like the Bills franchise is just like kind of jinxed. Like this isn't just a new thing in recent history where they've choked in the playoffs. This has been going on forever. I mean, they lost 4 straight Super Bowls at one point. I just feel like they're a team like Dallas where even no matter how good they look, no matter how talented they look, they always find a way to choke. And I'm kind of realizing this hasn't happened a ton in my lifetime, but now that they've continued to be one of the top teams, continue to do this, it's starting to become a trend. So when I looked at this game, I will say, first off, I did fade my Super Bowl pick in this matchup. I definitely put money on the Bengals because I saw the Dolphins game and I said, there's no way that they are going to be able to stop Joe Burrow. They couldn't even stop Skylar Thompson. And that's exactly what happened. I think Buffalo, honestly, just does not have that good of a defense. I feel like their defense is kind of just, I don't know what happened because I remember they've had a dominant defense the last couple of years. They turned a lot of the same players, and for whatever reason, I know they had some injuries. But still, like they were awful. And in a snowy game, like you would think this would be an advantage, but to be honest with you, like Josh Allen is kind of like the Trey Young of the NFL. Like he's very talented, but I feel like he does a lot of hero ball things where he just chucks it deep and a lot of turnovers, way too many turnovers, way too much trying to do too much. And instead of just taking the easy 8-yard pass, he does too much and he throws a pick. I also think Stephon Diggs, I just feel like he's the team chemistry. I mean, you saw it like at halftime, you saw it throughout the game, at the end of the game. I get it. There's like a certain level of passion you want to have for the game, but also like you have to be united. You have to be together as a team. And when you start seeing things like that, that's usually a bad sign of what's going on in the locker room. So I don't know. Maybe they weren't as united as we thought going into this playoffs. Obviously, they're all dealing with a lot with that whole DeMar Hamlin situation to begin with. But they just got beat down by a better team, a much better team. And all the credit to Joe Burrow. He really, I mean, it's not even a debate between Josh Allen and Joe Burrow anymore. It's a debate between Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes. So he's definitely passed Josh Allen up there. And, you know, credit to Zach Taylor. I think he's a very underrated coach. I don't think he gets credit as being like Spencer was saying, a leader among men or a game planner. He's just kind of a guy. And he's honestly like done a fantastic job. And, going to back-to-back AFC championship games with a team a small market team that, I mean, my entire lifetime has been awful. They're a really good team. So yeah, disappointed in Buffalo. I now have learned the Buffalo lesson, which means never pick them to win the Super Bowl. And that's it. And I hope for Josh Allen's sake that he's able to figure it out. Cause I do really like him. He seems like a really good skilled quarterback, but, he's trying to do too much. I think there's a lot of pressure on him.
The Trey Young is perfect. That when you said that, I was like, wow, that's actually on the money.
I actually agree with that. And I kind of want to make one comment just on the Stephon Diggs situation. I think with Stephon Diggs acting the way he did, I think it really is more of a story, I think, for Josh Allen than it is for Diggs. Because realistically, I think all Diggs wanted was just to be a playmaker, just to kind of get that target and kind of just see if he can make stuff happen. And obviously the Bengals defense was locking him up regardless. But like you said, Josh Allen's biggest qualm is that he just turns the ball over. He just makes silly mistakes. And I think that's what ended up happening. He didn't really spread the ball around too much. I felt it was just like Dawson Knox, Josh Allen run the ball, Stephon Diggs pray for him. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I just felt like there could have been more done, but that's also with Sean McDermott in the game plan there. But I think it more so what the Bills need is a better second option. I don't think Gabe Davis is that guy. I think if they can get, I don't know, it's so hard to get wide receivers, but like Waddle and Tyreek Hill, like Stephon Diggs needs somebody. It's not Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis are not that. Like they're not Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. They're not, you know, they're not a good 1-2. And I think if they can get that, then they can elevate themselves a little bit.
No, for sure. And but the thing is too, like Diggs, you are viewed as a top probably 3 receiver in the game. You can't get clamped up by Eli Apple. You gotta find a way to get open. Josh Allen's a good enough quarterback. If Diggs was really open, he's finding him. But I
Yeah.
do agree with you that Gabe Davis isn't that guy. I think he had that unbelievable game in the playoffs last year, and people were just like, okay, maybe he's good. And he's not
Yeah.
bad, but he's not good enough. If you want him in a Super Bowl, he can't be your second option. So I agree with you completely there.
Right. And then we'll go over to what the most recent game that really kind of decided who made it to the Super Bowl. Obviously, with the Chiefs going against the Bengals. Um, Obviously, going into it, for me to have my perfect bracket, I had the Bengals beating the Chiefs. Sadly, it kind of came to an end for me. It was a good game though. It was a good game. Obviously the Bengals came up a little short. I can't believe I got to give credit to where credit's due. I think this. I don't know if this will be a hot take, but regardless of what happens in the Super Bowl, I think Patrick Mahomes has solidified himself as a top 5 quarterback of all time already. I don't know if that's too early to tell, but the way that the dude played, constant playoff success. He's going to win his second MVP this season. On a broken, I don't want to say broken, but on a sprained ankle or whatever he had, he showed up, absolutely dominated. I mean, he made Marquise Valdez-Scantling look very good. To me, it proves that Patrick Mahomes can genuinely make anyone great. And Joe Burrow just couldn't get it done. He had the ball with a minute left. You just needed to get into the 45-yard range for Evan McPherson. Couldn't get it done. Patty Mahomes, once again, with ample amount of time, clutches it up, and obviously is why he's in the Super Bowl. So I think that game is more of a statement game for Patrick Mahomes than it is a fault for Joe Burrow. Obviously, I think Joe Burrow, in a sense, is still young. This was his second full season. Fact that he made it to another AFC Championship game at Arrowhead. And the fact that the Chiefs got so salty that they called it Burrowhead and all this shit, I kind of found it weird. I don't know. Clearly he came in there last season, did the job, and beat them when they were super underdogs. So, of course, they're going to call it Burrowhead. So, for the fact that they got so salty over, the mirror and all that, I just thought was kind of corny. Because the Chiefs ultimately are the Warriors of football, right? They're going to always either make it to the AFC Championship or make it to the Super Bowl. So, I just felt like it's kind of like the Memphis Grizzlies right now in the NBA. They're just talking shit for no reason. So I don't know why the Chiefs were, but that's just my take. But obviously, Patrick Mahomes was him and ended up clinching his third Super Bowl appearance.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up the Grizzlies because I was about to go on a rant about the Bengals, how they are the Grizzlies. There was a lot of shit talking coming into this game, and I want to give credit to Joe Burrow. It wasn't coming from him, so the fact that Joe Burrow was getting so much shit after that loss is kind of dumb because he wasn't talking. He was just, he was the subject of the talk because he's the quarterback of the team, but it was all role players, Eli Apple, talking shit, the mayor of Cincinnati, whatever. But I feel like there's a little bit of a culture issue in Cincinnati. That might be a little bit overblown, but you have all this shit talk, and then obviously Joseph Asai made the play that nobody ever wants to make. It was the right call, but it's hard for him, being 280 pounds, however much he weighs, running full speed to just stop and not hit Patrick Mahomes. But he's crying on the sideline. He's full on crying, and no one's there to back him up. I think I saw one teammate, BJ Hill, I think, backed him up in an interview later, but nobody was there to offer him a hand. And I know that that's tough when you're playing for a Super Bowl and you're like, wow, you just blew the game for us. But that's still your brother. That's supposed to be someone that you go to war with every single day. You have to be able to support him, knowing that the camera is panning to him every 5 minutes on national television of him just crying there by himself. And I thought that was really weak. Jamar Chase, right after the game, goes on Twitter and is talking about, 3 third downs, talking about the refs. The Chiefs didn't even score on that drive. There's been so much talk about the refs, and the refs were not good. But the refs really did not dictate that game. All of the great calls the Chiefs got didn't even result in points. They punted on those drives. So I don't know. The Bengals kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I felt like they were acting like the Grizzlies. They haven't won shit yet. They have not won a Super Bowl, and they're talking and it's not Joe Burrow. It isn't Joe Burrow. It's the rest of the group. But they had the ball in their hands with the chance to win the game, to march down the field and win the game. And they couldn't do it. And I think, like Brady was saying earlier, Joe Burrow is better than Josh Allen. That debate is over. But I don't think it's a debate between him and Patrick Mahomes. I mean, Patrick Mahomes his number one receiver is like Mecole Hardman or MVS or I don't know, Kadarius Toney, and he just continues to ball out and win whenever he needs to on a bum ankle. I was rubbed the wrong way by the way that they treated Joseph Asai. I know he blew it for you, but that's your teammate. But regardless of that, it was a great game, and it was two juggernauts. I mean, I think these two teams are going to be going head to head for years to come. I think Burrow and Mahomes, everyone wants to talk about what's the next Brady and Manning. That could be it. And it was a really fun game, is what I hoped for. But yeah, I don't know. I think maybe it's a difference in coaching. I don't know what it is, but I felt like they had to pick up their teammates, and they weren't there to do it.
Yeah, I agree with everything you guys have said. I feel like ultimately, like, this was just Mahomes being Mahomes. Like, I just don't think he was going to lose this game after all the shit talk about how he kept losing to the Bengals and Burrow. I just think this was one he wasn't going to let get away, and also the fact that it was in Kansas City definitely helped as well. It's honestly kind of crazy that I look at this Chiefs team and I just don't understand really how they're in the Super Bowl outside of Patrick Mahomes. Like, he just carries a team that is really not as talented as the teams that they've been beating. I mean, they have Kelsey, they have a solid offensive line. What's really underrated for them though is their pass rush. They have like one of the best pass rushes in the NFL, and outside of like Chris Jones has been a beast and Frank Clark too, but like um outside of that, like, their defense is really like not, they don't have the guys necessarily. So for me, I feel like the refs were awful, but I feel like like it wasn't like one-sided as much as people made it sound. I think they're just generally incompetent, and like that is what it is. But like it's not gonna be something that the Bengals can't be complaining about the refs when they had a chance at the very end of the game to go and drive, get a field goal, and win the game, and they couldn't. And instead, they gave a special teams big play. They gave up a stupid penalty, and then they lost the game. So overall, though, like, that was a pretty good game, and yeah, I mean, Mahomes is back in the Super Bowl, so what can you say?
Yeah, no, and I think just to wrap up before the AFC, I think you guys are both right. I think ultimately at the end of the day, Joe Burrow had the game in his hands. Minute left, go out there, get a field goal. Just didn't happen. Patrick Mahomes got the job done. So we kind of wrapped up the AFC with kind of just not necessarily counting. But if we did kind of our predictions, I think I went what 5-1. Just getting the AFC championship wrong. And then you guys, I think, went 3-3. Uh you guys had the Bills making the Super Bowl, so then you lost the AFC. Yeah, roughly around. Well, not too bad. Um, we'll kind of go over to the NFC. I think the NFC was just a little bit boring, but I kind of want to let Michael you talk about because you had two wild takes, and a lot of people on TikTok kind of let you hear it. So I'm gonna let you go first on obviously your team, your boys out there out west, the Seahawks. What went wrong with the Seahawks? Why didn't they beat the 49ers? And what happened?
I got to go check out these TikTok comments. I haven't even had a chance to look. Whatever they were saying is probably accurate. I mean, listen, the Seahawks played really good. I don't think that people should be acting like they went in there and were completely overmatched. In that first half, they were literally winning. They played phenomenal football. The Niners came out kind of flat. Brock Purdy missed some throws. Overall, like, the Seahawks came ready to go. If you actually like go back and look at the game, what ended up killing them was in the first drive of the second half, or the first Seahawk drive of the second half. Geno Smith fumbled the ball like on the 20-yard line. They're about to score a touchdown and go back up again. They're driving down the whole field, just a stupid fumble. And then from there, after that, it was a 14-point game, and then the route was on. But overall, I mean, the Seahawks played them really well, and I still stand by the fact that I mean, I think Kyle Shanahan's a little overrated, but that's a whole nother discussion. But I feel like the Seahawks are, I think they played them pretty well. Um, and yeah, I can't talk about it too much because I'm still scarred. But it was a really fun first half and a really bad second half. Um, and yeah, I would say that I think they did pretty good, um, given the situation. But yeah. Not my favorite game of the playoffs. Definitely not the one to start the entire playoffs. So, yeah.
Yeah, Spence, I'll let you go. Your comments.
Yeah, I mean, like he said, it was a great first half. They were in it, and I was sitting there. I remember I was watching it like on my phone on Hulu while I was at the gym the first half because I kind of didn't buy into the fact that it would be a great game. And I was like, wow, I got to get home and watch this thing. And I hustled home, and then the second half was what it was. But I think it they played them the right way. Like the first half, they did everything they had to do. They got a couple lucky bounces, a couple rookie mistakes from Brock Purdy. And then the second half, the better team flexed their muscles. It's no one had them winning that game other than Michael. So, it was an admirable effort. They put up a fight, and then in the second half, the wheels just kind of fell off. But I think this obviously they made the playoffs. They have the 5th pick in the draft. This is a team with a bright future, and we'll see if Geno Smith can make sure it's not a flash in the pan this one season that he had.
Yeah, listen, the Seahawks they're going to be just fine. They're going to be taking down the Niners sooner than you think, and yeah, I think it was an overall great season as a Seahawks fan. I feel very positive about what I saw this season, and we got the 5th pick, and it was from Denver, not Seattle. So definitely good signs to come. And screw the Niners. All right.
Yeah. Before we go on to the next one, the Seahawks, like you said, it was the tale of two halves. I think the Seahawks played great the first half. Obviously, they were up by 1 point. I had them covering 14.5 from our parlay, which was the only thing that missed. And then they just kind of fell flat the second half. I think the defense showed up. Like you said, the better team just came out. Christian McCaffrey had a dominant second half, and then they ended up winning the game. And pain, because I think my 25 was to win like 4 something. So Geno Smith owes me next season. We'll see.
Yeah, I don't know who gave you that advice to bet on the Seahawks. I don't know.
Just to cover even 3 scores, right? So whatever, we move. One game I'm really excited to talk about, because this is the first game that we actually all agreed on and we actually all were wrong on. It's going to be Tom Brady versus the Dallas Choke Boys. Brady, or Michael rather. I want you to kind of take the spotlight, because again, I put the clip of us talking about it. You kind of had a big rant about why Dallas is overrated, why they suck. But we got to give them their flowers. They came to Tampa and just kind of stomped on Tom Brady. So kind of explain what happened, why were we wrong, and why Tom Brady's in Cancun right now.
I honestly don't think I was wrong at all. I feel like I would stand by exactly what I said about the Choke Boys. They choke like they do. The problem is the team they were playing should have been like a bottom 10 team in the NFL. They were a bottom 10 team in the NFL. They were awful. We saw it the whole season. They had one good game towards the end of the season where Evans went off, and they're like, okay, maybe their team's getting together, and then right away just got absolutely blown out. I think Dallas is an okay team. I think they're a good regular season team, and they'll never win in the playoffs. So if you're a Dallas Cowboys fan, you don't like that, then hit me up when they actually make the NFC Championship game or the Super Bowl, and then we can talk about it. But no, I mean, it was an awful game as a Tom Brady fan. To see that's his final game, that even sucks more. But ultimately, I mean, this Bucs team, they were trash. Like, knew they were trash during the season. The NFC South was trash, so they won their division. But I don't think you can really give the Cowboys a ton of props for beating a team that was awful. I mean, this would be like there was several teams that did not make the playoffs that are better than the Bucs. So, I mean, any Dallas fans out there that don't agree, like what happened the next round? So.
Yeah, it was kind of a perfect storm when I was predicting that game of the blinders for Brady, where I was like, he's Brady. He's not going to go out like this. And then, the concept of the Choke Boys. And you got to give the Cowboys some credit. But like Michael said, the Bucs didn't really belong there. That was an injured old team that was getting carried by a quarterback who had a horrible offensive coordinator, a horrible head coach. And so the Cowboys flexed their muscles and beat up on a bad team. And and everyone was like, oh man, Dak, he's here. This was a great playoff performance. Maybe he's turned a corner. Who beats up on bad teams and then the next week chokes? It's Kirk Cousins. Dak Cousins did his typical thing. He showed that, he can win when he's playing against a team that sucks. And then we'll get into the next week's game when we get there. But we were just around early on the Choke Boys. The Bucs were just so bad that it transcended the idea of the Choke Boys and Dak Cousins. But the vision still came true. It was just a little bit of, a combination of Brady fanboying and hating the Cowboys. But the Cowboys were the better team on paper, and they played like it. But yeah, I mean, it's not really an impressive win. It's not a feather in Dak's cap to beat an 8-9 team, and we saw what
And
happened in the round. So fuck the Cowboys.
honestly, Spencer, I think your logic's completely right. Like I don't even care if Brady was still playing another season, even with his exact same teams, I'd still pick Brady to beat the Cowboys in the playoffs because more often than not, he wins in the playoffs and the Cowboys lose in the playoffs. So you gotta, once every once in a blue moon, some team decides to win a playoff game and they start talking shit and then they get blown out by a real team. And that's what happened to Dallas. So
yeah, I think a little bit to kind of piggyback on that. Obviously, we all had the Bucks. We all believed in the Tom Brady magic, and just Dallas really not showing up. And honestly, like it, watching that game, like obviously Tom Brady in the offense was bad, but we talked about them not running the ball and letting Tom Brady control the game. And that's exactly what happened. Like they did not run the ball. Like Tom Brady threw what 40 times or 45 times. Like the goal was just to air it out. Obviously it didn't work, but one thing that really stood out to me is how terrible the Bucks defense was. I mean, like you said, the Dak Cousins thing, like Dak Prescott looked like an MVP candidate. Like it was actually hilarious. He had like 4 or 5 total touchdowns in general. Like it was insane because it was like a lot of my Dallas Cowboy friends or whatever, like, this is our year. And like reality, when you have a banged up offensive line, you have no defense. Like it's not that impressive. I don't think this is something that Cowboys fans should take hold of and be like, we won a playoff game finally. Like, dude, we picked Tom Brady because we didn't have faith in you. Tom Brady had a shit team. And I just kind of want to make a comment because this is something that's been on my mind. So, like, ever since Arian Foster has made that little meme saying, like, yeah, we get a script at the end of the season or whatever, like, I kept thinking about the jokes we were making about how Tom Brady literally left his family to win this. So, like, I just thought about the meme of Tom Brady reading the script, realizing that he's going to lose to the Dak Prescott-led Cowboys and still choosing football over his family. That's why he's the GOAT. So, yeah, obviously the Choke Boys advance. And then we'll talk about that matchup later. The final game that we have, something exciting for me, but it kind of fell short the round after. The Giants beating the Vikings. We all predicted this, so it's really nothing surprising there. I think literally what we talked about kind of went to fruition, right? Great coaching by Brian Daboll, great led defense by the Giants, and ultimately just came down to Kirk Cousins just not being primetime. He didn't play well. Saquon Barkley had a great game. Daniel Jones had a great game. Daniel Jones ran for like 75 yards, threw for 300. Like, the Vikings clearly just are a regular season team, and that showed. Regardless what happened with the Giants this season, I'm very happy that they, along with the Dallas Cowboys, finished the season with a playoff win. So, to me, it's just like what the Cowboys did isn't as impressive. Obviously, I think the Vikings are a better team than the Bucks anyways, but what the Giants did is what I expected them to do.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you're exactly right that it's everything we said would happen is what happened. I mean, Kirk Cousins is who we thought he was. And there's never been a better, I don't know if it's career or just legacy in a nutshell moment than him throwing a 3-yard check down on a 4th and 8 with the season on the line. That was Kirk Cousins being Kirk Cousins. He folds when it matters. We all knew it would, and there's not much else to say. I mean, we knew the Vikings were the better team on paper, and they were going to lose, and they did.
Yeah, I completely agree. I will say that this was my favorite game of the first round of the playoffs. Like, this was a really exciting game. It actually delivered in a round where there was a lot of stinkers overall. But, yeah, I think, honestly, this was a great showing by Daniel Jones. I felt like he really showed what he was about. Overall, like, their team is not as talented as Minnesota's. So it goes, again, to the coaching of Brian Daboll. I think he deserved Coach of the Year. I know that there's other candidates as well, but he's fantastic. Saquon's a beast. And, yeah, like, I mean, Saquon is so freaking good. I love Saquon Barkley. He's so talented. They just need some receivers, honestly, and then I feel like they'll be good to go. I feel like their team overall is really strong. And, yeah, they had a much better win than Dallas got. So, you're evaluating between Dallas and New York, who's better, I would say New York's better. Nah, I just like to talk shit about Dallas since the Dallas fans here are coming at me in the comments of the TikTok. I need to still see these, but yeah, no, come on. No.
They're a good read. I suggest you read them a little bit on your free time. Kind of just piggyback off that. Obviously, we'll talk about the divisional. We had the Giants versus the Eagles. I kind of came in really confident in the Giants, obviously, what they're showing with the Vikings, and I didn't really buy into Philly magic, right? I had Gabby and Mitchell on the podcast the week after you guys, just kind of talking about the matchups and who I really thought. I did have the Eagles winning. I think we all had the Eagles winning. I felt like the Giants had something in them that would be a hard match for the Eagles. That it was good coaching, a good run. Because we all know that the Eagles rely on the run. And I just thought, look, the Giants can stop the run, which they haven't done at all this season. They have a shot at this game. But the Eagles just kind of stampeded them, really. They just ran the ball, and then the defense stopped the Giants from running the ball. And ultimately, like, I think Daniel Jones is a good enough quarterback in this league. Like, I think he has top 10 potential if he's not there already. I just think he just kind of got showed out. He doesn't have the receiving core to be elite. And then ultimately just talent took over hard work, really, and the Eagles had a better roster on paper.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like, I went into this actually like feeling pretty good about the Giants. The line was like super, super. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I definitely was betting on the Giants, and I felt like I don't know. I feel like this was just kind of one of those situations where it was like, what? Correct me if I'm wrong. It was like a Saturday night, right, in Philadelphia. Like all their fans are just juiced up, drinking all day. It was a rowdy environment. Daniel Jones was not ready for that whatsoever, and just an absolute. I mean, just beat down. Just an absolute beat down. This game was super impressive. I feel like this was like Nick Sirianni's like heel turn, like a WWE heel turn, where he just pissed off about every other fan base in the NFL. Just going for two up like 21 or 27-0. Just like fuck it, like let's just rub some salt in the wounds. And then the announcer's like, "This is analytics in play." I'm like, "There's no way this is analytics. Come on now." It was just a ridiculous game where you saw who the better team was, and now one team's in the Super Bowl and one got eliminated. But I don't think that takes away from the Giants' season. I feel like similar to Seattle, I feel like they had a way better season than expected, and I feel like they have a bright future overall. But I think Philly, I mean, this was the game where I was like, oh damn, like Philly's for real. Like Philly's really for real, because you could just tell it's so weird when you see like a city and a coach and a team all have like the exact same personality, but like it's like a perfect mesh of that entire situation for the kind of team that wins a Super Bowl. And you could just tell that they really wanted to just run the score up and show everyone what was up. So terrible game to watch. I was over it after you literally knew that was over when I think it was the Giants' second drive. They went for it on like a fourth down play. So just a weird call by Dable, and they didn't get it. And then it went from 7-0 to 14 and then kept racking it up. So I honestly think Brian Dable just realized they couldn't stop the Eagles and they were going to have to score touchdown after touchdown. And he did it in the first quarter, and that's when the game ended. So.
Yeah, for me, it was kind of what I expected. I don't know if I expected it to be that big of a blowout, but when we were talking about the Giants in reference to them beating the Vikings, it was like, okay, they're not a very good team. They're very well coached and they play hard. The Eagles are a very, very good roster. And it was, you might think Daniel Jones has top 10 potential. I don't personally see that, but he's good enough. The receivers are good enough, but once you play a real team, a real Super Bowl team, they're in the Super Bowl. This is what happens. You got to give some credit to the Eagles for not playing with their food and playing down, because that happens a lot. The Bills did that against Skylar Thompson and the Dolphins, obviously. And Daniel Jones is much better than Skylar Thompson, not to disrespect him. But, they came in and they cleaned up. I think it's funny that you bring up that the team and the coach and the city have so much in common. Maybe that's why I hate Nick Sirianni. I've been trying to put my finger on why I'm such a Nick Sirianni hater. Maybe it's because he's Philly in a nutshell, because
he is Philly in a nutshell. I don't know if it's an act, but he breeds Philly. He's Philly.
One thing I want to point out, Jalen Hurts is a starter this season, 16-1. Who is his one loss to? Taylor Heineke and the Commanders. I just want to throw that out there.
I mean, that no longer is Taylor Heineke's team; it's Sam Howell's team. But that's a conversation for another day. Before we really go on the other, I think the Giants ultimately have to tip their cap to the Eagles. The Eagles, like you guys said, are the better team. And we'll touch about the Eagles. I think what I will commend them for, like you said, Spence, is they didn't play with their food. They came out there and they got shit done. And we'll talk about the NFC Championship game because that was another shit show. But before we really get into that, we'll talk about the Niners and the Cowboys. And I'll kind of briefly touch upon it. I think it's arguably one of the worst games in the playoffs. The entire playoffs as a whole. I think the score was like 19-12. It was a defensive clinic, if you want to call that. Tony Pollard went out early. I didn't really think it was more of a defensive clinic more than just both offenses not, converting on what they had to do. Obviously, Brock Purdy, once again, which I was very high on Brock Purdy the entire playoff prediction, is just had to do his job, just be okay. And that's exactly what he was. He wasn't the numbers that he put up against Seattle, which were obviously inflated, but he looked like on the stat sheet, like 10 years from now, if we look in the stat sheet, we're like, wow, Brock Purdy fucked up the Seahawks. But like watching the game, he didn't really do shit. And then same thing against the Cowboys. He really didn't do shit. He just did his job. The defense, Nick Bosa, all those guys came to play. And Dak Prescott just couldn't do shit. When Tony Pollard got out, Zeke really didn't make too much noise. And then the Cowboys didn't have their play action. So the game was pretty boring, honestly. And the Cowboys just did what we expected a round later. And that's just choke.
Yeah, it's funny because obviously I was ragging on Brock Purdy a lot in the playoff predictions. That's why I had them losing in the first round. And ultimately what I thought kind of came to fruition a little bit, but he did his job, and we kind of take that for granted. Dak Prescott couldn't do his job. I mean, that game was so disgustingly winnable for the Cowboys, and they just couldn't do it. And granted, the Niners defense is the best in the league, but they were completely inept on offense. They had nothing, no juice at all. And I think those last couple of drives where they had a chance to, I think, tie the game, right? And they just, I think, went 3 and out the first time, and then the next time came out, and Dalton Schultz had probably the worst stretch a tight end has ever had in the history of the NFL. And it was just so comical. Then they finished it off with like Zeke at center, and that didn't work at all. It was a truly, in my opinion, and obviously I am a Cowboys hater, but I think anyone could say this, a humiliating loss. They had every chance to win that game, and Dak is who we thought he was. And they lost in embarrassing fashion with the Dalton Schultz mistakes, with the Zeke thing. It was humiliating, and I think that game will forever be, whatever Dak Prescott's legacy ends up being, that will forever be a damning thing on his legacy. Like, that was a truly embarrassing performance for the team as a whole, but also for Dak Prescott. The fact that they couldn't do anything at all, and they went out like that, it was awesome for me to watch. But if I was a Cowboys fan, I would be in tears.
Yeah, Dallas is incredibly talented, and they just lived up to the legacy. They just choked, and Cowboys fans can get mad and punch their TVs or throw TVs and drive over them with trucks, whatever they want to do. But at the end of the day, like, they should be used to this because it happens every year. So, are you just buying a new TV every year too? But anyways, besides that, I think the game itself was. I think it was a good defensive game. I know maybe it wasn't like exciting defensive plays, but I do think like you're not locking up all those elite playmakers on the Niners and even some guys on the Cowboys without having some good defensive play. It was a snooze fest. Honestly, these playoffs were kind of bad. I feel like there's just wasn't a ton of good football games, but yeah, no, I think the better team won definitely. And I mean, Dak, you lost to Brock Purdy, like, in a playoff game. That just can simply not happen. You have an equally talented team defensively. You have weapons offensively. You can't lose to Brock Purdy, and you did. And so, yeah, overall, just kind of it was kind of the kind of game I expected, to be honest with you, a game where it was low scoring, boring, and the Niners won.
Yeah, and I felt the same way. You mentioned about WWE earlier, and Paul Heyman had this thing where he was on wrestling like recently, and he was like, "Philadelphia is going to lose to Brock Purdy," like as if he was Brock Lesnar, and that's ultimately what the Cowboys ended up happening. And leading up to this game that's coming up for the NFC Championship, which, Michael, I think is on par to what you were saying. I genuinely think this. Not even those playoffs, but just this stretch this season with prime time, like, this might be like the worst football that we've seen. Like,
Yeah.
like overall, like, in a long time. Like every primetime game was atrocious. I, honestly, every playoff game was pretty bad. Like the only exciting one was Bengals, Chiefs, and probably Giants, Vikings. I think everything
Yeah,
else was just kind of either a slaughter, a shit show, or just really like what is going on. And
yeah.
I think that's what ended up happening in the NFC Championship game. Obviously, my Final Four was correct. I got all my Final Four right. Obviously, you guys had Tom Brady or the Bucks making it far. I just needed the Bengals or the Niners to win. Obviously, but it's so tough because, and we'll touch about it on the Eagles when we get to the Super Bowl picks. But it's hard for me to buy into the Eagles hype because of the road they took to get there. They beat up on a less talented Giants team, and now you're going up against Brock Purdy and the Niners. Brock Purdy gets hurt on the first drive of the game, needs Tommy John surgery. There you go, out the window. Josh Johnson, who clearly looks like he hasn't gotten reps at all with this 49ers team, can't catch a ball, can't complete a pass, can't do anything. And the fact that the Niners made it a close game at half is insane to me. And then he goes down with a concussion, and now you got Christian McCaffrey playing quarterback. Obviously, at that point, you really can't do much. You can't throw the ball. Like the frustration on the Niners players clearly showed. And what I will give the Eagles credit, they didn't play with their food. They went out there, stuck to their game plan: run the ball, 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 beat them down with defense. And clearly, their defense was good enough to injure two of the 49ers quarterbacks to have Christian McCaffrey play quarterback. Not only like they literally gave Brock Purdy Tommy John surgery, and that's like a baseball related injury. Like that's like insane. So Brock Purdy's legacy dies this season. For this to be his only loss is impressive in itself. I think that game obviously was very boring. Like it was one of the worst championship games I've seen in a while. But there's not much you can do. I think a lot of Philadelphia fans are excited for this Eagles team, as they should be. I mean, they came out this playoffs and dominated. They killed. But the one question mark I have on this Eagles team is if Jalen Hurts is built for that moment. And in the two games that he's played in the playoffs, he really didn't have to do much. He gave me Brock Purdy energy in a sense where he just needs to do his job. But come the Super Bowl, which is why I originally had the Niners losing to the Bengals, is because I don't think Brock Purdy could have done in the Super Bowl. I don't know if Hurts can do it in the Super Bowl. So ultimately, my thoughts on that game is the Eagles just did what they had to do. They versed a team with a fourth string quarterback and Christian McCaffrey at wide receiver or quarterback, and they handled business. So it was a pretty straightforward game for the Eagles.
Yeah, it was obviously unfortunate that Purdy got hurt. Josh Johnson should have never been out there. I mean, he was completely overmatched. I honestly felt bad for him. It's weird seeing a quarterback and you just are like, man, like this is tough to watch. And then he gets hurt, and you have McCaffrey, you have Purdy coming in and just handing the ball off. I mean, they're down, and he cannot throw like you said, he needed Tommy John surgery, and he was who they had out there with an elbow. He told Kyle Shanahan, I can't field the ball. Like that's the level that it got to. But I do think even if he had never got injured, the Eagles win that game. They were just the better team. The Niners got banged up on defense in that game. They don't have the quarterback that the Eagles have. And I agree with you that Jalen Hurts hasn't had to do much. And I don't think he's, people are talking about him like an MVP candidate. I don't think that's who he is. But he's better than Brock Purdy, and he did enough. And the Eagles just dominated that game. Obviously, it was unfortunate the injuries that happened for the Niners. I think the Eagles win either way, but it probably would have at least been a little bit more entertaining than seeing Josh Johnson get murdered and then Brock Purdy handed off like 46 times. But yeah, it was the Eagles had the easiest road ever, and they got to the Super Bowl. But like we both said, you got to commend them for not playing with their food and getting shit done when they had to.
Here's my big question, and I feel like this hasn't been talked about enough, at least from what I've seen out there on the internet or Twitter, whatever sports news source you have. Why would a team in the playoff that has a history of losing quarterbacks not carry a third quarterback? Like, why would you rather have 9 corners or like a 5th running back? Like, you that your quarterbacks always go down. Why would you not carry a third quarterback? That feels like in a playoff game you need to have. This will be a situation that will never happen again because no team will ever go in the playoffs with 2 quarterbacks on their roster. And if they do, they're crazy. Because this was insane, especially with the new concussion rule as well, where it's very easy to get put in the concussion protocol. Like you could lose the quarterback real quick. So that was kind of mind blowing. This game sucked overall, just absolutely sucked. I mean, I was like, oh, Christian McCaffrey's gonna go play quarterback. This will be fun to watch, but it like they literally could not throw the ball. I mean, it was just like watching like in like they could have. I don't understand honestly why they didn't just go put anybody else out there to play quarterback and at least throw the ball downfield, because all that Philly had to do was stack the box with 11 people because they couldn't do anything other than a screen pass or a run, and it was just embarrassing. And honestly, again, like what you guys are saying, I don't think this was even that impressive for Philly because. I mean, the Niners were in this game like they were not like getting blown out by any means, and I feel like Philly itself, like I feel like this was a game they should have won more handedly, and I feel like Jalen Hurts gets more credit than probably deserved. Like I feel like he's a really good quarterback. I just don't believe. I think sometimes there's situations where you're put in a great situation and you play like awesome. And I think this is kind of reminded me honestly of when Russell Wilson came out to the Seahawks when they made the Super Bowl, where he was a pretty solid quarterback that could move. Hurts obviously has more mobility, um, but it's mostly a team that's going to be winning with the run game and the defense, and it's a quarterback that's up and coming but not there yet, and that worries me in the Super Bowl matchup against Mahomes, which I know we'll talk about. But this wasn't. I saw a lot about how great Philly played and how this was such a. I'm like, honestly, like I came away from that like both teams looked bad. Like this should have been much more. And honestly, the Philly, a lot of their momentum came from a catch that it wasn't even a catch. Devontae Smith's one-handed grab wasn't even hauled in. So if that didn't happen, who knows how this game would have gone. But yeah, overall, just once again another stinker. But I think honestly, like the two. I wouldn't say maybe it's not the two best teams, but I think it's probably the two best teams that are in the Super Bowl. You could put the Bengals maybe over Philly if you feel like it, but I feel like these are probably the two best teams, and I think a lot of people didn't have this as a Super Bowl matchup because it's kind of scratch, picking the one seeds. But I think what this playoffs taught me is that with this new format of 7 teams, I think getting the one seed is huge because you get the bye and the easiest round, the next round opponent, and having home field advantage is so key as well. So I think, in terms of like seeding throughout the playoffs moving forward, I don't think that necessarily being like a 2 or 3 is like, it's nice to have home field for a game or two, but I think getting that bye and then having 2 home games when other teams are more beat up than you, I think that's going to be something that I factor more into the equation because that was pretty obvious this postseason. That was a huge advantage.
Yeah, and I before we really get into our Super Bowl picks, I think that's something I also learned as well. Just because you get a bye, and in football, with it being such a gruesome game, especially now, like a week does a lot. Like Patrick Mahomes has a bum ankle, and now he's going to get 2 weeks to heal going into the Super Bowl. Like that's a big deal. So I really think going into the future, that's something to note that teams should strive for that number 1 seed because you're right. They get a bye, then they verse the worst team, right? And then they get to the NFC or AFC championship game, and it really just takes one game to get to the Super Bowl for them, if you think about it. So it's something that I'm definitely going to take into note. Overall, I think before we get into the Super Bowl, if we're kind of counting, obviously you guys both had the Eagles making it to the Super Bowl, so at least you guys had one out of the two in. I didn't have either, but I went pretty perfect from the AFC and then the NFC. I wasn't counting our records, but I think we all did pretty piss poor because we had either Brady going far or it just didn't work out. But the moment that we all been waiting for, going back 9 months ago from the season, the Super Bowl, Super Bowl 57, we've got the Kansas City Chiefs led by Patrick Mahomes and the Philadelphia Eagles led by Jalen Hurts. And I'm going to do this one last time just because it's so relevant toward like the meme sports culture with the script. I feel like you really can't write a better script if you think about it. Andy Reid versus his old team. I read a stat somewhere that they said that if Andy Reid wins, he's against the Eagles. He's like one of the most winningest head coaches of all time. I don't know the exact thing, but it felt like what the fuck's going on? It's Kelsey versus Kelsey, the first brothers to ever verse each other in the Super Bowl. There's so much going on, and it's like, wow, why didn't I think of this? It was right there. It was free. So I'm gonna let you guys kind of go. Michael, I kind of let you lead it off. Who do you have winning Super Bowl 57? What's your predictions? Who do you got winning MVP? What do you think the score is going to be? How do you see it playing out? Spill everything that you got.
Yeah, I guess kind of going into this matchup, I was really kind of torn because I felt like I could see this going either way because I look at the Chiefs and I say, their roster is not there compared to Philly's roster overall in terms of playmakers, talent on both sides of the ball, especially the trenches. But honestly, most of that doesn't matter when you're talking about Patrick Mahomes. Like he is the best player in the game. He's that legacy kind of a guy where similar to how Tom Brady's been his career, where you bet against him, you're probably going to regret it. And then I also take into account, that team also has way more experience. They've been to the Super Bowl. I get it, like 2017 Eagles won, whatever, but like that's not most of the players are not the same. The Chiefs have had a long history of making it to the AFC Championship game 5 years in a row. They know what it takes to win a Super Bowl, and I think they're going to be really hungry. I think this is Mahomes kind of getting tired of the disrespect. So I really, in that sense, pulled toward the Chiefs. And I look at the other team and I say, this Philly team, similar to what you were saying, Rizzo, they beat two teams that were bad. I mean, comparatively not bad, but like the Niners didn't have a quarterback, literally did not have a quarterback. That was one of their wins. And the other win was against the Giants. I mean, the Giants are a fun story, they're a good, solid team, but they're not on that level. So what are they really going to be like when you go against Mahomes in the championship? Like what is that going to look like? And I think for me, the thing I've struggled with the most is that Jalen Hurts, I'm so torn because he has a history of winning big games in his NFL and collegiate careers where I'm like, okay, like maybe this guy is just kind of similar to Joe Burrow, just like a winner. Like he's just going to pull through and win these kind of big games. He's clutch. But then the other part of me is like, I just don't totally believe that he's on that level talent wise. I feel like he's just not there yet. And then I'm like, damn, but this team is so good. Ultimately, I've decided that I feel like what's going to happen is, and this is going to be probably a hot take here, but I think that the team that wins is going to win by 2 scores, and I think it's going to be the Philadelphia Eagles. I feel like they're going to go in this game, and I think that they're just so much more talented. I get it. I get it that it's Mahomes versus Hurts, and that part, it's like you're betting against Mahomes, probably a bad call. But you factor in the fact that he can't really move as well. I know he scrambled at the end of the game for one play. Like that's sweet, but like the Eagles are going to target that ankle. Like they're not stupid. They're gonna be trying to hit him there. They're going to try to get him banged up early on. They're going to send the pressure. They're just so good in the trenches. I feel like that's ultimately when you look at the Super Bowls, big must-win games like this. The trenches are huge. I get it. The quarterback position matters as well. But are we sure that their receivers are going to be able to get open against Darius Slay, against Bradbury, against Gardner Johnson? Like I'm not even sure that they're going to have. And then okay, Kelsey, he's the big guy, but like they're going to be able to they're going to double team him. They're going to take him out of the equation as much as possible. He'll get his plays. He'll get 80 yards, maybe a touchdown, but he's not going to be able to carry against an elite defense like this. And honestly, I don't feel like the Chiefs, like I get that the Bengals are a good team, but I didn't feel like they played that well. Like I'm not totally feeling confident that like the Chiefs are like this is like their best version. I feel like this is one of the worst Chiefs teams we've seen in recent years. And they're in the Super Bowl, super impressive. They could win it. But I just feel like the better team overall is the Philadelphia Eagles, and I feel like they're more healthy. I feel like they're just going to, and not to mention, they just have way better playmakers. I mean, they have 2 receivers that blow all the receivers on Kansas City out of the water. They have a better run game. They have a quarterback that's mobile is so important in the NFL, especially in these kind of games. And I get it. Even if Mahomes is healthy, like he's able to run, but like I just love betting on the quarterback that can move and that can provide that element, a team that has a run heavy approach. And honestly, like I feel like the Chiefs, like I think there's going to be a lot of money on the Chiefs because you don't want to bet against Patrick Mahomes, but I don't know. I just got this feeling that Philly's they're just the best team, and I think it goes back to how we're talking about when we first did this about the Bills and how they were seeming very like that it was just almost scripted that they were going to win the Super Bowl. I feel like what I like about Philadelphia so much this season is that it just feels like they're so arrogant. The fans are so arrogant. The coach is so arrogant. Like I feel like it's a weird thing. Like with any other team, like they're like if it was Dallas or San Fran or any other team acting like this, I'd be like that's a red flag. But Philadelphia and just their typical like nature is I just feel like this is just I feel like it's a perfect storm. And I think they're just the best team in the NFL. And I think, it took me a long time to really buy into Jalen Hurts, but I really like that he has a history of winning big games because this is the stage. It's going to be bright, but it's not like he hasn't seen bright lights before. And I really like that factor as well. So I got the Eagles winning by 10 plus, and hopefully it's a good game, but I just like them here.
Yeah, it's tough because, like you said, the Eagles are the better team at most positions. And their defense is elite. And I kind of agree with what you said that although the Chiefs beat a good team in the Bengals, they didn't necessarily impress. Um, and I learned when the Chiefs lost to the Bucks in that Super Bowl that sometimes the best defense just wins the game. The Bucks destroyed Mahomes with their pass rush, and there was nothing that was a that game was over in the first quarter, basically, with the way that things were going. It's just hard for me because we haven't seen Jalen Hurts really in his NFL career in a shootout game. This was the easiest regular season schedule ever for a team that made the Super Bowl. That's an actual stat. It was the easiest playoff path for a team that made the Super Bowl ever. So the Eagles are talented. I can't take that away from them. It's man, I'm
sorry to interrupt you, but here's my pushback. Are we sure this is going to be a shootout? Because how many points have the Eagles given up in this playoff so far? I mean, what isn't it like seven a game? That's like what they're averaging. Like, I honestly will not be surprised if the Chiefs can just simply not move the ball very well against Philly, and then it's just going to come into Philly just running down their throat over and over. Like, I just, if it's a shootout, I totally agree. You don't bet against Mahomes in a shootout against Jalen Hurts, but I don't know if that's how this game's going to go. Sorry. That was just had to hop in there.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. That's kind of where I was going to go, is that the way you beat the Eagles, as the Commanders proved, again, you got to dominate time of possession. Just run the ball. And as much as I like Isaiah Pacheco, he's not necessarily a bell cow back. The Chiefs don't have that on their team where they can just pound the rock. So I do think the Eagles defense would be able to tee off a little bit. And if Mahomes' ankle is not where we want it to be, that's going to be a huge issue for them. Like you said, they have Darius Slay, they have James Bradbury, they have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Like, the Chiefs' group of weapons other than Travis Kelce are going to have a hard time getting open. I feel stupid because when I picked Brady to win, to get to the NFC Championship game, when I picked the Bills to get to the Super Bowl, I kept saying, you know what? Everything on paper tells me that this isn't going to happen. But I think it is. And that's how I feel about the Chiefs, man. It's just, as good as the Eagles are, and I agree with pretty much every point you've made, Michael, it's Patrick Mahomes. And he is the new, you don't bet against Mahomes. It used to be you don't bet against Brady. Now it's Patrick Mahomes. You don't bet against him. The bye week for the Pro Bowl is going to be huge for his recovery. And I think it is kind of this thing where he has gotten a little bit of a disrespect. People all acknowledge that he's probably the best quarterback in the NFL. But people are talking about Burrow. People are like, we're not appreciating how special this guy is. And then separately from that, do I want Nick Sirianni or do I want Andy Reid? Andy Reid with a chance to, the Eagles fired him to hire Chip Kelly. That's got to be the most disrespectful thing that could ever happen to an NFL head coach ever. I think as tame and as, level-headed as Andy Reid is, he has to have a fire under him right now. I know he wants this really bad, and I think he's just a better coach than Nick Sirianni. Patrick Mahomes is the best player on the planet, and although the Eagles are, I think, the better team, and I agree with everything you've said about their defense being able to tee off, I'm going to pick the Chiefs, and I think it's going to be close. I think maybe win by 3, maybe win by 6. There's no way the Chiefs blow out the Eagles in this game, but yeah, I think Mahomes wins MVP. He's Patrick Mahomes, and I bet against him during this playoff run, and it made me look stupid. And part of it, I will admit, is that I really would hate to see the Eagles win the Super Bowl. But another whole part of it is that Patrick Mahomes is the GOAT right now. In the current era, he is the best. I used GOAT incorrectly. I'm not going to be able to come up with the acronym on the top of my head, but he's the best player in the NFL right now. And no one can touch him. I think this is a legacy game for him in a way where he can prove, like Brady did multiple times, you can put me against a team that has way better weapons than me, a better defense than me. I'm still going to beat you. And that's what I think we're going to see. That's what I hope we see.
That could definitely happen.
And
Yeah.
and the acronym you were looking for, Spencer, was he's the Jita. He's the greatest in this era. There you go. No, I honestly like I came into this knowing what I wanted to say in terms of my picks, how it's going to play out, and everything. And Michael, I will say you bring up a lot of good points. I think, especially for the Eagles, I think I'm on the path that you are, Michael. I think it's actually going to be a very, very low scoring game. I don't think it's going to be a shootout. I think the Eagles, if they stick to their game plan that they win the entire postseason, it's going to get into the trenches, get gritty, get physical, and run the ball. And I think that's where the Chiefs are going to find trouble. I mean, the Eagles practically have four running backs. You got Miles Sanders, quick, elusive back. You got Boston Scott, who's going to take all the hard hits. You got Kenneth Gainwell, another small, elusive back. And then you got Jalen Hurts. Obviously, Jalen Hurts is not just a running back, but he can throw, he can run the ball. I think what's so interesting about this game, I think there's a lot of legacy on the line for both teams. I think Jalen Hurts has something to prove because, yes, he won a championship in college, but he was overtaken by Tua Tagovailoa at halftime and didn't ended up winning. So I think this is almost like this is my time in the biggest stage. This is for me to win. But I think Serrani's going to do something to where Jalen Hurts doesn't have to be that guy. Like, he doesn't have to go in a shootout. I think why I lean the Chiefs here, and it's not even because don't bet on Mahomes or like don't bet against Mahomes or anything. I think just the way that the game script is going to set up really is just Andy Reid's going to know that he needs to kill possession. He needs to kill the clock. And Patrick Mahomes, whether it's third and long, third and short, second and long, first and 10, whatever it is, he's going to make the right play. And with it being 2 weeks for him to heal to the Super Bowl, I really think the game comes down to how good Travis Kelce can be for this team because you can't rely on Hardman. You can't rely on Tony. You can't rely on MVS to really win this game. MVS had a great game against the Bengals, but you can't rely on them to do well. I think it really comes down to Travis Kelce. If Kelce can have a big game, then I think this game blows open a little bit because my thing with Jalen Hurts, he hasn't proved it this playoffs. A.J. Brown doesn't have a touchdown in this playoffs. Devontae Smith has one, but that's the only passing touchdown that they have in this entire playoffs. Their game plan is just to run the ball. And that can work. Like, I don't think the Chiefs defense is that locked down to stop the run, but the Chiefs defense this playoffs has been like, I don't want to say great because the Eagles defense has been great, but they've been really good. Like, Chris Jones and all those boys have it settled to where I think that the Eagles are going to have to do a little bit of play action. They're going to have to kind of go away from the run just to see what they can come up with. I really think Patrick Mahomes, he's just going to be Patrick Mahomes. I think the game, honestly, is going to be like 2017. Like, I bet the under, honestly. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I think it's going to be boring. But if it's a one-score game, 1 minute left, 2 minutes left, and Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs have the ball, with Butker as their kicker, like, I'm going to pick Kansas City. But I will say, I think for the Chiefs to win, it's going to be a close game. Like, I don't see a world where they blow out the Eagles. I just don't. But for the Eagles to win, I think the Eagles win in a blowout. Like, I agree with you, Michael. I think if the Eagles win, they win by 2 scores. They win by 10 points. So I might sprinkle, honestly, like Eagles minus 9.5 because it's definitely probably like plus 300 or 400 or something. Because I think the way that the game script is set up, they're going to win by running the ball, taking possession, and just killing Patrick Mahomes. But I think something to note as well is the experience. Patrick Mahomes is now making his third Super Bowl. And every time he's made the Super Bowl, he's versed the powerhouse defense of the NFC. Did it to the 49ers. He ended up winning. Did it to the Bucs. He ended up getting killed. But Tom Brady was also the head of the offense. Now they're going their third time against one of the best defenses in football. And this time he's versing someone I think is closer to Jimmy Garoppolo than they are to Tom Brady and Jalen Hurts. So I think with that on his side, I think Patrick Mahomes and the game script is let Jalen Hurts beat us. Stop the run and let Jalen Hurts beat us. And if that's the case, I'm willing to take Patrick Mahomes winning this game. My score prediction is 2017 or like 24-21, 23-20, something along those lines. But if the Eagles win, I think they win in like 28-17. Like, I think they win in like strong fashion. But I got the Chiefs winning. I think Patrick Mahomes wins MVP because I don't really see a world where he's not. They love Patrick Mahomes. Unless Travis Kelce goes for 150 yards, Patrick Mahomes will win MVP regardless. So yeah, ultimately I have the Chiefs winning. My score prediction is 2017, Patrick Mahomes Super Bowl MVP, and it's a slugfest. I think it's going to be a boring Super Bowl, to be honest. I think it's just going to be control the clock, and it's going to be a defensive battle.
Yeah, I didn't give the score prediction or the MVP, but I guess I'll just say it here. I'll go Eagles. I'll go they win 30-20, and I'm going to go with the defensive player winning MVP. I don't know who. It's going to be someone in the defense who gets a touchdown or a couple picks or a couple sacks, fumble. I think it's going to be one where the defense really rides the momentum and then Hurts just kind of takes over and it kind of gets out of hand. But yeah, I love the under. Or not under. I love the bet you were saying where it was Eagles -9.5 because I do agree. I think if they win with like both you guys said, it's going to be in like blowout fashion. I don't think you're going to go up against Mahomes and Hurts in a close game and see Hurts like win the duel. Like that's not what's going to happen. It's going to be because the Eagles are just straight up a way better team than the Chiefs. So we'll see.
Yeah, completely. I think we all kind of are in agreement that there are two scripts for this game. Either the Chiefs win a close one or the Eagles kind of roll it. And Rizzo, what was your score prediction? Because we are pretty much on the same page, and I don't want to give the exact same score prediction that you gave.
My final was 2017 Chiefs winning.
Okay, I'll go 23-20 Chiefs. And yeah, I'll say Patrick Mahomes wins MVP, but if it's not him, I'm going to go Chris Jones because that means that the defense stepped up. Chris Jones made some big plays, maybe a strip sack, stuffed the run, and but it's going to be Mahomes if they win.
Yeah, I think, we're all very similar in terms of alignment, but obviously we had different picks, which was great. Obviously, just to wrap everything up, I had the Chiefs win in 2017. Spence had the Chiefs win in 23-20, and Michael had the Eagles win in 30-20. I'm curious to really see what ends up happening if Mahomes solidifies himself as a two-time Super Bowl champion. He's going to be a top 5 quarterback of all time, regardless if he wins or not. But it's going to be a good one. Guys, I want to thank you guys so much for coming on. Any final things that you guys want to say for the second time being on the RizPod?
Go ahead, Michael.
I'll just say to the Cowboy fans that, are all pissed off, like, how about you win a playoff game that actually matters? But no, I would say that I don't actually hate the Cowboys that much, but I mean, you should probably pick a new fan base if you want to see Super Bowl. I feel like this overall playoffs has been kind of bad, but I'm really excited for the Super Bowl. I feel like this is going to be a really good test for Mahomes. I feel like kind of like what Rizzo was saying, he's gone against elite defenses. I personally think that the fact that was brought up earlier, Eagles are 16-1 with Jalen Hurts, 16-1. Like that is not your average, like just good defense. That is a team that is dominant. And I haven't just not felt that same type of like energy, same type of games from the Chiefs this year. They've pulled a lot out of their ass. And to be honest, like that's a credit to Mahomes. But at a certain point, you're going to have to just you're going up against a team that I don't feel like they've gone up against. I firmly believe the Eagles are the second or best team in the NFL. And I'm very curious to see how this game goes. I think it'll be either a Mahomes legacy game or it's going to be one where we look back on this and be like, damn, like we really underrated the Eagles all season because they were clearly the best team. So I'm excited for it, though. I think this is going to be a good Super Bowl. And the one last thing I would say is the best part about the Super Bowl, which hasn't been brought up yet, is whatever the Burger King commercial will be because it'll piss off about 100 million old heads that flip out about the Whopper song. So, yeah, I'm excited for that more than anything.
Whopper, Whopper, Whopper.
Yeah, the Whopper song remix featuring like Drake is going to be amazing.
Yeah, it's going to be some crazy shit. I'm hyped.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. No, I mean, closing thing for me, obviously happy to be back. Always fun to talk football and really any sport. Yeah, it was kind of a disappointing playoffs, but like we said with the primetime games, that's kind of been the theme this season. I'm still excited for this Super Bowl. I'm always excited for like the storylines and the legacy things that happen from the Super Bowl. So in that sense, it's like watching a great TV episode. Like, let's see what happens to our favorite characters. But yeah, I'm excited. I think the Chiefs are going to pull it out. I think Mahomes is that guy. But yeah, thanks for having me. And now that the season is about to end, it's about to go into my favorite time of the year, which is draft season. So if you're ever doing a mock draft, you know who to hit up. But yeah, I'm excited. And it's been fun being back here and talking football.
All right, great. Well, before I wrap it up real quick, what color is the Gatorade bath this season? I got blue.
Lemon, lime, yellow.
I'm going blue.
All right.
Blue.
There it is. Blue's your lock if there's any sports books that do it. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching, listening to the 5th episode. Michael, Spence, thank you guys for coming on again. And it's your boy, the man, the myth, the legend, RizPod, signing off for episode 5 of the RizPod.